Welcome to Thirst Impressions. I'm Belinda. Today we are talking about liquor, laws, and lies. We're making a gin-based cocktail tonight, and my favorite, Uncle Val's, is what's coming up.
I am Will, and my favorite gin is Sapphire.
Consistent as ever, Will. My favorite gin, man, I just love all gins, but top of mind right now, this very moment, Tanqueray Rangpur.
Very good as well. Got that lime flavor, yeah. I enjoy all of those gins, and I'm Kevin.
Oh shit, I forgot my name. I'm Spencer.
You're Spencer, for sure. You're definitely Spencer. But my favorite right now is Monkey 47 gin. It's a little
solid
spendy,
choice,
but it's worth it. Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah.
All right, so what are we drinking today?
Good question. We had a plan. We were going to go with a cocktail, a classic Prohibition era cocktail called The Last Word. It's a beautiful cocktail, and I recommend everyone do it.
It's one of my favorites.
But the problem is, Will's relatively new to making cocktails, as we learned last week. And so the fun adventure that he gets to go through every week is going out and buying whatever ingredients that we need for the cocktail, because he likely doesn't have them on hand. And he went to
I don't.
But when he went to the liquor store and tried to get one of the ingredients that I actually have right behind me, right about there,
Me too.
maraschino liqueur, they didn't have it. And we had texts going back and forth saying, hey, if you're in the liquor store, can you look for it for me? I happened to be in the liquor store when he sent the text, and they didn't have it at the liquor store I was at either.
Well, the fortunate and unfortunate thing about Utah is, just for those who don't know, Utah's liquor stores and liquor laws are, shall we say,
Stringent.
Very stringent, very stringent. And so on the plus side, right, there's a website, so you can actually search and see what's in stock and where it's in stock. The downside is when it's not in stock, it sucks. So there were, I think I had searched real quick online. There were 4 stores that had it
in the whole state.
In the entire state, guys.
Yeah. And 3 of them were in St. George, it looked like.
Yes.
And to be clear, this is not, if you go to just about any bar that isn't just a beer bar or a wine bar, they're going to have this liqueur on hand. It's used in several classic cocktails. So this isn't like some really obscure ingredient that we were looking for. And I don't know. I don't work for the state. I don't work for the Department of Alcohol. Like I don't know why, but Belinda and I happened to be going to, we stopped by a local distillery right after we were at the liquor store, and in chatting with one of the proprietors of the distillery, she said that the state liquor stores are significantly reducing the number of SKUs that they have. In other words, the number of types of alcohol that they have.
Yeah, there was a tequila coffee liqueur that I like that they've just stopped selling. It's not that they stopped making it, they just stopped selling it.
And in some cases, it's not even something that makes business sense.
I heard they were discontinuing Hendrix too. I'm not entirely sure, but I heard.
I love me some Hendrix too, so that makes me very sad.
Hendrix.
But, sponsorship deal. I think we should talk more about that, but let's get into the cocktail we are going to do.
My bad.
No. I'm just thirsty, so I want to make a cocktail. So what we decided to do is a riff on the classic cocktail, The Last Word, and it's called The Written Word. It's not a super well-known cocktail. If you search for it online, you can find the recipe, but it's not in all the standard cocktail recipe websites that I would go to. But so The Last Word calls for equal parts gin, green chartreuse, which is an herbal liqueur, and the maraschino liqueur, which is also kind of an herbal liqueur, and a little bit sweet, and then lime juice. The Written Word, which is the riff, is those same ingredients, but instead of the maraschino liqueur, it calls for an orange liqueur. I'm going to be using Grand Marnier. You could use triple sec. You can use any of the orange liqueurs that are out there. So like I said, it's equal parts. Again, a nice, easy cocktail to remember to impress your friends with by just pulling that out of your hat.
I forgot my
Spencer's
jigger.
back with the proper implement for measuring. That's good. So again, take your Boston shaker or whatever you have to shake your cocktail in. And I'm going to start with squeezing some fresh lime juice. Again, I will not dwell on it, but use fresh lime juice if you can. I know it's so much easier to pour out of a bottle. But if you have the opportunity for fresh, try and always use fresh. It's just so much better. And I'm going to be careful not to squeeze my lime juice right over my keyboard.
That's what I did last time, and my keyboard was all sticky.
Yeah, I wonder how that happened.
Definitely wasn't the agave. Definitely was not. I did not have that on my hands as I was trying to type.
No, that lime juice will squirt out the sides if you have an implement to squeeze it with. So I've got an ounce of
I
juice.
pre-squeezed my lime juice.
I will tell you a quick little tip here. When you're making cocktails, it's definitely cheaper to make cocktails at home as opposed to going to a bar. But sometimes you mess up, sometimes you spill, sometimes you whatever. Always start with your cheaper ingredients. So in other words, lime juice is my cheapest ingredient here, and then work your way up in price. That way, if you measure poorly or spill or whatever the case may be, you're saving a little money. You don't want to spill the expensive stuff. So I'm moving on to the orange liqueur.
Just had enough orange liqueur to make the cocktail. So.
And the standard recipe calls for 3/4 of an ounce.
I made a double.
I'm just going ahead and making measuring an ounce of everything because I'll drink it all, and I'm home and I'm not driving. Everyone should drink responsibly always. So I'm adding the gin.
What gin are you drinking today, Kevin?
A relatively inexpensive gin because with all the flavors of the chartreuse and lime and the orange liqueur, it's kind of silly. In my opinion, it's kind of silly to use expensive gin just because you're going to miss out on some of the herbal notes of the gin and the delicate nature of the gin.
I'm using
because of that's a nice one. Yeah.
Yeah. Tanqueray number 10.
I just went with Seagram's. It's fine.
Nice.
I'm going with the best gin.
Oh,
It's my favorite.
And I'm doing Uncle Val's, an old favorite.
Uncle Val's is a favorite of mine.
For those listening, Will has Bombay Sapphire.
Yes.
Ooh, also a favorite. I
guess I should. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I should not say also a favorite because pretty much all gins are my favorite. But
you know which gin sucks though? I mean, straight up dented brick. I'm just gonna say that.
Really?
Yeah, it's local. I hate to say that. But
it's so cheap though. It's so cheap.
It's cheap.
So I get it usually for mixing drinks, but
yeah. Not good for sipping for sure.
No.
All right, I'm gonna add ice to Again, about a cup of ice. I mean, there's no need to measure. Just make sure you've got enough ice in there. It's nothing worse than a not properly chilled cocktail, in my opinion. So I'm going to put my shaker together, give it a little thump, and shake. And I did not do a good enough thump because it just came out a little bit on my head. So
this is called a Boston shaker, right?
Shake some more. Say that again.
It's called a Boston shaker, right?
Yeah, Boston shaker is this style of shaker. You can use whatever you have. This is just the type I prefer. Again, you want to shake it until your hands feel ice cold, and then try and shake it another 5 to 8 seconds after that. Just again to ensure proper dilution, because you do want some of the water to dilute the cocktail. That's part of the flavor profile. But then also you want a nice cold cocktail. At least I do. So I've got a little stand here. I'm going to put up in front of my face in order to show what I'm doing. So I've got a coupe. A coupe is the proper glassware.
Not to be confused with a forceful takeover of the United States government.
I was going to say, Kevin, you're pronouncing that wrong.
I guess that would be appropriate to just call it a coup instead. But no, it's a coupe. I get, for those who are local to Utah, I get almost exclusively all of my glassware at a store called Deseret Industries. We can talk more about that later. It's just a secondhand store. But interestingly enough, for those of you in Utah looking for barware, you can often find very inexpensive and very classy and nice barware right at the old DI. So I've got now my shaker and my strainer. So I place the strainer on top of this, and then I'm having a hard time showing you. And then I just strain my cocktail right into my coupe. I'll set that there so you can see it. And then I like to garnish mine. Again, as I stated in the first episode, I'm a little extra. So I'm garnishing mine with some maraschino cherries and a lime wheel on a little pick here. And you could either lay it on top, or I like to kind of put mine on the inside. But there you have it. That is the written word.
The written word. Yours
Have you all made yours?
Yours looks more yellow than mine.
That could
The
be
lime juice
because of the
sometimes.
color of your orange liqueur.
That could be too.
Possibly. I believe the
I was using Cointreau, or however you say it.
Cointreau.
Cointreau.
I'm using Grand Marnier, and it's a little more clear. So that's
gotcha.
probably why. But yeah. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Oh, Will's still shaking.
Shake it like you mean it, Will.
Woo. For my garnish, I have my cherry on a porcupine quill. So
I will
That's
say
wonderful.
I miss the note of maraschino or maraschino, however you say it. I do miss that.
No, it's an adequate substitution, but it's not the same as the last word. I do love the last word, and kind of going back to what we were talking about, I think that's a good place to start our conversation for the day. Is living in a place where, I mean, we were talking specifically about liquor laws, and I know lots of states in the U.S. have varying degrees of strictness to their liquor laws, some very loose. Some states where I thought, oh, well, the state's going to have very loose liquor laws. And then I was surprised to find out, no, they actually have pretty strict ones as well. But then there's other states where you can just go to Costco and buy any type of liqueur that is legally made in the United States.
in Utah, it's good to know how you can make substitutions in a cocktail, because it's
Definitely.
likely you're going to have to do that at some point.
Well, yeah, it's interesting too, because in Utah, I mean, you can get special stuff. You just have to order a whole case.
Right.
But maybe we should talk about why it's so weird. Where did this all come from?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, there's weird liquor laws all over the country, and some states that were strict. Like we recently just changed we have to buy any spirit from a state sponsored liquor store, any wine from a state sponsored liquor store. The only alcohol that we can buy, alcohol that you drink anyway, that we can buy from a grocery store or a convenience store is beer. And it can only, up until very recently, it had to be 3.2% alcohol by volume beer, which is a little bit, boozier than drinking water, barely.
Yeah, it's just alcohol flavored water is basically all it was.
And fortunately, we the alcohol industry kind of forced Utah's hand and said, we're going to stop making 3.2% beer because we might as well just be bottling water.
If I remember correctly, Oklahoma was the only other state that.
Yeah, Oklahoma. And I think there was a state maybe in the Northeast a few years back,
Yeah.
like New Hampshire, or I can't remember which one. But
So beer manufacturers essentially were like, okay, we're done, we're out.
yeah, once
doesn't make
Oklahoma
financial
stopped,
sense.
they were like, this makes no sense whatsoever to make special beer for Utah. So we did change that. So now you can buy up to 5% beer in the grocery store, convenience store, elsewhere. But every other type of alcohol in the state needs to go to be purchased through a state-run liquor store. Here's the problem. The state government leadership is comprised mostly, and by mostly, I mean a very, 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 of people who identify as Mormon, active Mormons. And most of them probably never have, and I'm being serious here, people not from Utah, people not familiar with Mormonism specifically, might be very surprised to hear this, but probably most of them never have tried alcohol even once in their whole life.
Yeah.
Or maybe they tried a beer or two in high school, but definitely don't have background in alcohol, either in consuming or bartending or really in any capacity.
We all grew up in the predominant religion here. The Mormon Church is, I grew up calling it, so I'm going to keep calling it that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have my first drink until I was 33 years old.
Wow. Right? I had sipped a couple things in high school, and it was disgusting. It was disgusting. Probably like crap beer that someone stole from their dad because their dad wasn't going to miss, the crap beer.
Four Locos.
Yeah.
No, those didn't exist.
I miss Four Locos.
There were only 2 Locos back then, but no, they were very bad. So I had no interest in it. So I didn't try alcohol until my 40s.
How old were you, Belinda, when you had?
I was 35. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was 16 or 17.
You don't have to incriminate yourself, Will.
Well, I didn't start to like actually drinking until I was like 19, but I had drink at like high school parties and that sort of thing.
I will incriminate myself a bit here. Will and I worked together, and the first time I met Will, I had no idea how old he was, and I said, I was like, oh, I like this guy. He's really cool, and I invited him to come over to my house for a cocktail on the weekend, and he's like, he was kind of nervous, and I was like, oh, am I putting off a weird vibe or something? And he's like, well, I'm not 21 for another month or something like that. And I was like, oh, I had no idea you were.
Yeah, it was only a month.
Yeah,
in other states, I actually just learned about this week. In other states, I forget which one specifically, but like you're allowed to take your kids to like a bar, and it's as long as you're with them, they can drink.
Yeah, I learned about that this week too from the Kyle Rittenhouse photos of him at a bar.
All right.
I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could do that. My only experience with underage drinking was I was an intern in Detroit, and we were just across the border from Canada. I couldn't leave because I was a international student at the time, so I couldn't leave the country. But the other interns that were with me, they would often go to Canada because in Canada you can drink at 18.
Right.
So they would go and they would just get shit faced.
In most of the world, you can drink at 18, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the best thing for your brain, I think.
No. And we tend to.
I mean, Will turned out okay, though.
I think so.
That's
for the most part.
Think how much smarter he would be if he wouldn't have started drinking.
So back to Utah.
Yeah. So, like, while government should be made up to represent the people who live in a place, I'm totally fine with Mormons being in our government because there's a lot of Mormons who live in our state. Yeah. The problem that we're starting to run into is the state has changed a lot, and people have moved to the state. For those that don't know, technology's really big here in Utah. A lot of big tech firms have started opening offices here. And so a lot of people have started moving here from out of state. I work with several people who never really, they had heard of Mormonism before they moved here, but they literally knew nothing about it. Like they had heard about multiple wives and things like that, but that's about it. And so they move here and they're often very surprised at not just having to go to a state-run liquor store, but the lack of bars, the lack of just options that are out there. And so as our state's population has changed in terms of race, religion, a variety of things, our representation in the local government has stayed pretty stagnant. And a vast majority of those that lead our state and make decisions for those that they represent, especially when it comes to alcohol, but other things too, tend to make those decisions based on what the leaders of their church tell them, not their constituents.
Right.
I can't definitively say this, but as far as I know, there's kind of a good old boys club when it comes to politics locally. And so you have, and nepotism isn't the right word, but you have this tendency to want to include Mormons in every aspect of government, including regulation for alcohol. And for someone who's never, I remember, growing up Mormon for me and never having had a drink, there was a lot of fear, a lot of apprehension, a lot of hesitation when it came to having that first drink, because essentially you're taught that when you have that drink, you're a degenerate and you're going to hell.
Yeah.
You're an alcoholic instantly, right? And so I had this fear. And so I imagine these leaders probably have similar mindsets. And that's why some of these weird, obscure things happen where inventory is scarce. There are some upsides to having a state-run liquor store. I'll talk about those. But inventory is scarce. I don't know if you've gone to liquor stores in other states. I have. They are well lit, they're clean, they're appealing, the staff is helpful. Here, it's like, imagine if you could buy alcohol at the DMV. That's what it kind of feels like. Right?
You don't have to take a number, but it's pretty close. Yeah,
it's pretty close. I mean, now they make you line up 6 feet apart.
I actually think it might improve some stores if they did have you take a number.
That's true.
There are some Friday nights where the line is just out the door. It's crazy.
Honestly,
what I was going to say though, Spencer, have you been to any of the new liquor stores?
I've not been to the new liquor stores. No,
they're actually pretty nice. Like they have some like nice displays for like some of the higher end liquor, and it seems like they're trying to like take more of like an Apple Store approach to liquor.
I agree with that. I agree with that. We just had a new one open up near me in Saratoga Springs. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful building. There's like sculpture, like some, public art out in front of it. No, it's nice.
Yeah. It's weird.
But get this.
But all the others, it's like, here's a warehouse that you can buy a liquor store.
In a bombed out part of town. Here's this like shithole. And there happens to be alcohol sold there.
But get this. And this is a note to everyone, tip from Kevin once again, don't store your wine upright. That's a big no-no. If you drink wine at all, unless you're buying box wine or a screw-on cap wine, which I'm not against. I purchase those both sometimes. But a wine with a cork in it should never be stored upright for an extended period of time. And by extended period of time, not even like overnight, really. Because what happens, and Belinda could probably speak to this better, but essentially you start getting bacteria in that cork.
Really?
Is that correct?
Well, the cork dries out.
Cork dries out.
And then it's more likely to break when you're opening the bottle and fall into the
I've had that happen. It's not a fun experience.
No,
your wine can even spoil.
That's right.
It gets air to it and all of those things. And so this brand new store in Saratoga Springs that's so beautiful, and they clearly put a lot of money into it, has every single bottle of wine upright, sitting just on a shelf. So this is the problem. I'm sure no one intentionally did that. I'm sure no one was like, I want to fuck up all the wine in the Saratoga Springs area. I honestly don't think anyone purposely did it, but we have people running these stores. Hello, Mr. Whiskers.
Whiskey Puss.
For those of you just listening, Belinda's cat just jumped right in front of the camera. So, but we have people running not only the larger organization of the Department of Alcohol. I don't remember what DABC stands for, but
assholes, bastards, and cunts. I think that's what it means.
That's it. I forgot. Yeah.
So the DABC,
that's right.
the DABC likes to boast that a majority of their leadership are drinkers. So I looked that up just to see, what's this majority they speak of. So of the 7, we have 4 of them who are drinkers. So
But
just
by
over half.
drinkers,
Yeah.
We just mean that they have had alcohol in their
They have
life, not
any
that
sort of
they've
knowledge of
experienced in the
alcohol.
industry, not that they've worked for distilleries or bars or anything like that.
And the liquor store comments you mentioned, it's interesting because I suspect it's not so much that the DABC said, yeah, let's store the wine bottles upright. It was likely that they hired an architecture firm or interior design firm that has no concept of
No
what drinking is
experience.
no experience.
Yeah.
And they likely didn't, consult with anyone. And as a designer, that's what I do professionally. If I'm designing something I don't know about, I always ask questions, but I don't, that doesn't make sense to me that the wine's being stored upright.
The interesting thing, this is the only liquor store, and please, listeners, if you know of others in Utah, comment. But this is the only liquor store I've seen, and I've been in several in the state, that does this. So I think you're right. I think it's probably they got a bid from a design firm that built this place out for them.
It's surprising
and they
to
had
me.
no sense.
It's surprising me. So within this context of Utah liquor laws and the stores, there's actually a wine store specifically for wine. And it's actually
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, there is. There is a dedicated wine store. I mean, granted, they sell, your liquors and a few other things, but they have, $300 bottles of wine. And they're all stored horizontally. So why didn't they consult that design?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of thought put into. I think it's so interestingly enough, liquor sales in the state every single year, when all of the tallying has been done, we'll probably hear about it again soon. Every single year, it's just a steady incline of sales for alcohol in the state of Utah, which not only runs parallel to a new group of people moving into the state, but also to people leaving religion overall, not just Mormonism, but religion overall in the United States in the year, in the past decade. So the state is clearly making money on this and could make so much more if they were willing to just provide what people want. And I'm not even calling for let's massively, maybe I am, but I'm not, I would be okay even without massive changes to liquor laws, but creating some sort of board of bartenders and restaurant owners and distillers and whatnot who had to be consulted before decisions were made for state liquor laws, or even, to your point, in the way we design how that alcohol is distributed to people, would go a long way to not only giving us what we as people who enjoy alcohol want, but also to the coffers for the state, right?
Maybe this
we could use that money to feed kids at school. We could use that money to fill holes in the road, whatever. Maybe
this has changed, but I recall at one point it was illegal to even advertise alcohol, wasn't it? Or maybe it's in certain media. I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember seeing something about that.
So it wasn't that long ago. I'm much older than all of you, so not that long ago to me is probably different than it is for you. But it wasn't that long ago. You couldn't buy any kind of alcohol. You still can't buy any kind of alcohol on Sunday unless you buy it in a restaurant or bar, or you're buying that 5% or less beer in the grocery store.
After 11 a.m.
Not even be able to buy beer
11?
in the grocery store.
Oh, at the liquor
They
store.
literally made them cover it on Sunday so that you couldn't even pick it up.
That's right. Oh my God. I forgot about all these.
Before that, there was a law you couldn't have bars. You had to have private clubs for members only. If you're old enough to
God.
remember, there, you would always hear commercials for institutions that served alcohol,
What does that mean?
and they would always say at the end, "A private club for members only."
What the fuck?
Yeah. And I so.
But the children.
I
Shortly
had
after
no
I returned
idea.
from my-
I had no idea you were still alive during Prohibition, Kevin.
Yeah, well, Prohibition lasted a little longer here, but so I returned home from my Mormon mission, 2-year Mormon mission from Detroit, actually, where you were just talking about. And shortly thereafter, I was working at a hotel. And long story short, I filled in for a long stretch of time, like 6 months to a year, as a bartender. I didn't drink. I was very LDS Mormon, and but I was filling in because they were in a tight spot. Anyway, it was a private club, so that when people would come in, we were a little laxed about it, but we were supposed to check someone's
Do you hear that,
membership.
Kevin?
What's that?
Do you hear that? That's the DABC coming to get you.
No, I wasn't
you
laxed.
admitted.
I swear I wasn't laxed. And Will was 21. I swear. But you were supposed to check and ensure that these people had a membership. And if they didn't, you had to have them literally, like, this was back in the 90s, like physically fill out a card and become a member. And then they would have to have a sponsor. It's not
insane.
AA. This is to actually drink. A sponsor to let them join the club, just like if it was a country club or something like that.
And you're saying this was in the 90s?
Oh, yeah, this definitely was in the 90s. And I would have to look up to see when that ended, but it wasn't long.
Until like 3 years ago that it ended. They added bars, but bars have specific requirements. We know this because we looked into starting a little business at one point. But bars have requirements as to the amount of money you need to make from either alcohol or food. Same with restaurants. If you go to a restaurant and you just want to drink, you can do this in other places. You come to Utah, if you go to TGI Fridays, is that even still a thing or whatever? And let's just say you want a margarita. Okay, you have to order some food with it. I don't know if that's weird everywhere else, but even if it's, hey, I just want some bread and butter and I'll pay you 50 cents for it.
So some restaurants
you have to make a transaction.
Yeah, some restaurants get kind of clever about it, and they'll have 1 or 2 items on their menu that are very cheap, and they're a thing of pretzels, or maybe, if it's a nice restaurant, a homemade pretzel, or, a very small bowl of chips and salsa that's $2 or something like that, because they know someone wants to come to a nice place and get a nice cocktail on a date or after a hard day of work or whatever. And so we figured out ways to get around it, but it's definitely still on the books. Belinda, what was that one? What was that? What did we call that law? There was a nickname for the law.
Oh, they had
restaurants
signs on the not a bar. Remember, they had the little slips of paper on the windows. This is a restaurant, not a bar.
What?
Because people have a hard time figuring that out, apparently. No, I'm talking about the wall. It was like the Zion curtain. That's what they call
the
it.
Zion curtain. That's the one.
Remind me what that was about.
What is that?
Oh, so they had to have some sort of partition up in any establishment that served alcohol and also allowed children. So a restaurant that had a bar in it had to have like some quote veil, right? For Mormons or former Mormons. So you had to have some sort of, right.
Sorry.
So you had to have some sort of partition, whether it be like a piece of frosted glass or, a piece of fabric or a wall constructed between the eating area and the bar area. So in restaurants, gorgeous restaurants that had a beautiful bar, they had to erect walls and partitions. They put up glass and whatnot to obscure the bar area.
Yeah, some did frosted glass.
Children.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, you're putting a lot of trust in the restaurant folk to go behind a wall, make your drink. I don't know. And there's part of drinking, like the experience of seeing the bartender make your drink that's satisfying,
right.
and you totally miss out on that. And that's I think an example of how the leadership that doesn't drink and doesn't appreciate not only the experience of sharing a beverage with friends, but like us, we really get into it. You miss out on that. You miss out on the conversation or even the opportunity to learn something.
Kevin and I, whenever we go out, we really enjoy talking to the bartenders. We always sit at the bar at a restaurant if it's available, and we chat up the bartender, ask him questions, ask him for suggestions, usually order a couple things off the menu, and then let them throw us, something interesting that they think is fun, right?
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do is just say, hey, make me whatever you came up with.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yep. What are you into right now? And then oftentimes they'll be like, oh, we just got this new bottle of something. And then to Belinda's point, you not only learn, but you taste all these delicious things you never would have known about otherwise. So highly recommend sitting at the bar.
Yeah, that's the
not during COVID so much, but yeah.
That's the
What's the most
bar
interesting?
split.
Yeah. What's the most interesting freestyle cocktail you've received at a bar, do you think?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that one.
Yeah.
I know what Belinda's is.
Kevin knows what mine is. I literally had a fish juice cocktail.
Oh God.
Oh my God.
And it was phenomenal. It was so good.
See, the
shout out to Post Office Place.
See, the episode I'm dreading is martinis, like the classic martini. I'm dreading that episode because I do not like them.
I literally said to Belinda yesterday when we were trying to decide a cocktail for this, like, we could just do a classic martini. Like, we'll have the ingredients to that. And
barf.
And I was like, we might need to build up to that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll do a Bloody Mary episode because I've never had one, and
I've never had one either. They look disgusting.
Thank you.
We may need to save that one for when we can be together in
Seriously,
person.
sometimes I'm like, I wonder who was so high and fucked up. They were like, you know what we should do? We should get some
spaghetti sauce and vodka,
tomato soup, and some alcohol.
SpaghettiOs.
Let's throw some fucking bacon in it and celery.
It's so good.
I'm just like,
so good. No, I can't wait for it because I have a former landlord actually that I'm still good friends with, Rick. Shout out to Rick, who still will just out of the blue say to me, text me and be like, remember that Bloody Maria you made me that one time? That was so good. That was so good. And it was delicious. So, yeah, we'll save that for when we can be in person, and then I'll make us all Bloody Marias or Bloody Marys.
We can do it after we've had a couple
that'll
drinks.
That'll give me some time because it might be a while before in person. That'll give me some time to work up to it. That'll give me some time to work up to it.
Yeah. Every day, stare at yourself in the mirror and say, I can drink a Bloody Mary. I can drink a Bloody Mary.
I can do this.
Repeat it 3 times.
I know. And then it'll happen. All right. So what else is weird about Utah liquor laws? Let me think.
Well, I wanted to add in some more, I don't know, context or something. Okay. I was thinking that I think there's another dynamic of the Utah liquor laws, is that I think because it's like a Republican state, you have these conservatives who want people to think that state-run things don't work well. And so they have artificially created the system that works just well enough where people are happy on average. Like if you're just going to the liquor store to pick up some gin or vodka, it works just fine for you.
I guess a follow-up. Go ahead.
But it they don't make it as well as it could be because they're not the drinkers. They're not the consumers of it, A. And then B, they don't want people to think that the government does a really great job at running businesses.
Have you had a great experience at a liquor store? Like great.
I haven't had an entirely negative experience. I've had experiences where it's just like, oh, I need to go pick up some vodka, just run inside, grab it real fast and run out. It's like the grocery store for liquor is kind of how I see it.
But Utah liquor stores, they have just enough employees to run the registers and a manager stocking.
Barely run the registers.
Somebody stocking in the back. There's no one to talk to you about choosing things. And I want to, preface that. I have seen really great employees at this Salt Lake store, on 3rd or 4th West or 4th East, with people out. It's kind of more wine forward store, and they did have somebody out talking to somebody. But for the most part, there are very few employees on hand, and they're not always the most knowledgeable in like higher end products sometimes. So
They actually
yeah,
they
go ahead.
actually used to have cards with points for
They still
wine.
do. I think they threatened to take those away, but I've still seen them.
I thought they were doing away with those.
Yeah. The last time I visited, which was yesterday, I still saw them up. So
Okay.
either they're not enforcing that or it didn't go through.
Maybe enough people complained.
So for any of you listening who are state liquor store employees, shout out to you. Like,
Yes, I was going to
doing
say
the very
you guys-
best you can. I'm certain, I don't know for sure, but I'm certain you're not making as much as you should make.
You're not assholes,
Yes.
bastards, and girls.
No.
Yes.
but I also would guess that not a lot of training goes into making them, knowledgeable people who can help the customer. Have you ever gone to a liquor store? I remember experiencing this for the first time, and like my mind was blown. I think I might have been in Vegas or something like that.
Like
But I go into a liquor store. It's
Total
maybe
Wine or
Total
something like
Wine
that.
or something like
or
that,
Lee's.
and it's like Costco, like in that they're giving samples.
Yes.
Like there are
Oh, yeah, and they tell
representatives
you everything. Yeah.
from brands and
What?
distilleries who are like, would you like to try this jalapeno tequila? Would you like to try this, botanical gin from wherever? And of course,
It's
I've
like, can I
said
help you
yes to
find
all of them.
something? What are
Yeah.
you in the mood for? Yeah.
True,
Yeah.
Right. And people, even employees who can answer questions when you're like, I know I need some tequila for this cocktail, but I'm not quite sure what type I want, or, can I substitute mezcal for this cocktail or what? Not that I'm saying, liquor store employees across the country, other than in Utah, have much more knowledge.
But they probably
But
drink.
certainly Utah's not making an effort to provide a good customer experience, not only
Right.
within the store, but with the inventory that we have.
Right.
I do.
And
And
that's kind of what I was talking about, is like they could be doing these things.
Right.
They're just choosing not to. Like
Right.
like the search function on the website, like
It's
Spencer
terrible.
introduced
So
this to
bad.
me.
if
It's
you do
the
not
search function is horrible.
intentionally
like,
horrible,
That's what I'm saying. Like it really wouldn't be that hard for
Hire
them
a
to
fucking
just
UX
hire a
designer.
couple people. Yeah. Hire a couple people to tell them how they can make like the whole entire statewide liquor store system work better.
okay,
Right,
like
so-
Belinda had
It
a
wouldn't be
thought.
that hard.
No, well, Spencer just mentioned earlier that up until very, very recently, like in the last 2 to 3 years, all the liquor stores were in the worst parts of town, right? Like, and they're these very plain cinder block structures. They don't have any
There's
windows.
no
They're-
color, no adornment.
no color, no.
There are
It just
windows.
says
Yep.
Utah State Liquor Store out front, and it's
very
a bad
sometimes
experience.
the signs are very tiny and obscured, and it's this
Yep.
weird.
Miss
red
your
color.
turn. You got to go around the block again.
Have you been to the Orem liquor store? You probably
That's-
haven't, because you can't find it.
That's the one I was going to mention.
It's so terrible. It's hidden. It's hidden.
Orem's hidden. Provo was kind of hard for me to find too.
They have that baby one in Provo. Yeah.
Provo is the size of a closet, a walk-in closet in an $100,000 starter home.
The
It's terrible.
cutest Utah State liquor store is in Mount Pleasant, I'd have to say, right, Kevin? That teeny tiny liquor store in Mount Pleasant. It's like an old tiny
Oh, right.
storefront. It is
So
pretty
that's one of the only, but here's why. There's a handful of liquor stores in the state, and they're usually in very small population centers where people have complained enough that like, we have to have a liquor store. We don't need to drive 3 hours to buy liquor. But the state's like, it's too small for us to invest money in building anything there or running anything there. So the state has a small handful of licenses that they grant to private parties to run a liquor store. Now, they obviously have to follow very strict state guidelines. And so the only thing that's really different is it's usually much cuter or like interesting. And you possibly have employees who are a little more knowledgeable and invested in the idea that, oh, I'm a salesperson or a vendor or whatever who sells alcohol. So I might want to know a little bit about
The
it.
other thing I was going to say is it's likely that the people in charge are Mormon, and the people working in the store are not. That's the impression I get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of
definitely.
weird. That's kind of weird. But going back to the point of the website, so our state agency has this website, the Department of Alcohol, whatever. And you go, there's a search function. You can search for a product. Now, when you go to Google, you can type whatever the fuck you want in that search bar, and it'll give you some result, because Google's actually incentivizing, or rather, they're invested in getting you results, right? You know,
They want you to actually see the results.
They want you to have a good experience with the product, so you can come back and use it, right? So it actually works. Now you go to the state liquor store website or state liquor website, and it's cool that you can search for things, right? And you can tell which store has inventory. And we'll talk about rare alcohol in just a bit. But unless you spell it correctly, it's not going to give you a result.
There's no autocorrect.
Have you noticed that?
No. Oh, yeah, I have noticed. It's
Yeah.
awful.
So one of my favorite whiskeys, Henry McKenna, I often search, and sometimes I forget, you know, is it MAC? Is it MCK? And if you spell it incorrectly, especially the Japanese whiskeys, if you get the spelling off, you're not going to find it
No.
Right.
at all. It's
Right.
not going to return a result. It's terrible. And Will, you know this stuff. It's not that hard to fix.
It's really not that hard. It's not trivial, but it's not hard.
Well, if
Like,
you have a database, right? And I don't know a ton about programming. I know enough. I've worked with programmers, developers, engineers, if you will. It shouldn't be that hard to just query the database and, you know, make a comparison and give you at least results that are close or exactly what you want.
Or filter information, right, to find what you want, and they don't really
Right.
have that.
Yeah, even to be able to say, hey, I'm interested in finding something new. Maybe I'm not in the store. I just want to know, what whiskeys do you guys have?
Right.
Did you mean Yamazaki?
Did you
You didn't spell Yamazaki, but
Okay, so we've been negative on the state liquor agency, and rightly so, because there are a lot of negatives. But one of the positives actually is price control. Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah.
definitely.
So, for example, I love Japanese whiskeys. We could do an episode on that. I love Japanese whiskeys, and depending on where you go across the country, the price will vary wildly, right, based on supply and demand, as it should be. But because it's a state agency, for some reason, I don't know the rules or regulations here, but the prices are fixed at a certain profit margin. So a Yamazaki 12 will sell for $99 reliably here. I guess it went up to $129 recently, but the price is fixed. There's also opportunity to get rare whiskeys. We just signed up for the lottery to get, was it
Happy Van Winkle.
Happy Van
Yeah.
Winkle, whatever. And so
it's not
that
a lottery in Utah. It's a drawing.
That's true.
Oh,
There are no
sorry.
lotteries in Utah.
my apologies, a drawing. Lotteries are of the devil, sinner. So we signed up for that. And it's kind of cool because when it becomes available, if it becomes available, and if you're so lucky that you qualify, you'll get it at that retail price.
Yeah.
Right.
So I've won a drawing before, which was a bottle of Elmer T. Lee bourbon, and it was ultra fabulous. It was so phenomenal. And where it retailed for over $100 a bottle, and most locations nationwide, I got it for $40, $39.99.
wow.
I got this bottle of this fabulous bourbon, which was wonderful, but they only bring in a certain number of these kind of higher end alcohols. And then they, you know, raffle them off. Not raffle, but, you know, that's gambling.
A
too.
raffle
But,
is technically a lottery blended.
drawings.
Sinner.
I know they have these drawings for, you know, the few that they bring in. Right. So,
Right.
and they haven't really done a lot of the drawings. They've done like one type of alcohol at a time. And this time it's what, like 10 or 12?
There was a bunch. I applied for all of them. I'm like,
Yeah.
I
don't care
did
what-
too.
like, I don't care what the
was
fuck
like,
I get.
Yeah.
Do you know if that drawing happened already?
No, I think it's well, it might I think it's this upcoming week. I feel
Okay,
like when
okay.
I signed up, it said there was 6.5 days left. So it should be happening soon. Speaking of lotteries, Mega Millions is almost to $1 billion.
No, it's
What?
more. Well,
Holy-
combined, they're over $1
That's
billion
insane.
now. One's over
Yeah,
700 million, and
We
one's
might
over
need to drive
800.
to Idaho. I'm just
That
I
saying.
is
know.
insane.
The lines are crazy.
See, like Utah, why are we like holding on to like these stupid ideas that like gambling's bad and weed is bad? Like the
Well,
state could
I'll-
make so much money,
Family
and like
value.
lower our property taxes, and
all
if
those
they
things
would
can
just
be bad
let us do
innately.
things.
All those things can be bad innately, but you can also be
Right.
addicted to or ruin your relationships with others through a lot of things that are legal here.
Yes, that's what I
Those
was
things
gonna
are
say.
just tied to the predominant religion,
Yep.
and the leadership of that predominant religion are mostly men, white men. Well, pretty much all white men. So white and men, at least outwardly heterosexual men. And well, I'm being serious. The numbers would, but the statistics would say otherwise, but and behavior. But I think the thing we have to remember is these are all octogenarians for the most part, or older. And so, I mean, not that there's anything wrong. I have friends who are in their 80s. Like, there's nothing wrong with someone in their 80s. But as times change, as conventions change, as the way we do things, whether it be in funding government or in living our lives or whatever change, people who've been around for that long probably are going to be less interested in changing, even if it's super beneficial to the vast majority of people.
Worked for them so far, right?
That's why you see in a lot of high demand religions, that including Mormonism, which is kind of what we're talking about here today, because it affects all of us, is people who aren't willing to change. And when they do change, when in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they have a revelation from the prophet.
Right.
It's usually about a decade to a decade and a half behind what the vast majority of mainstream America has already accepted as either reality or a norm or whatever. Because the whole quorum of people who make those decisions hear it from God, decide that it's not something they want to do. It's radical, it's extreme, whatever.
Right.
What are your guys' thoughts on that? I don't want to sound bitter. I really don't. But it's a reality that we live with here in Utah, where all these decisions being made by government are actually tied to those, 15 men that work at atop one of the tallest buildings.
It's not an official thing, but I can speak to being in that mindset. And certainly we'll sprinkle this commentary throughout future episodes, but the condition in which you're part of a religion or belief system or organization that basically requires you to surrender your entire sense of self, and everything that you think or act has to come from a place, or rather, I should say, is strongly encouraged that it comes from a place of comparing what is being told to you by these higher ups. And that's problematic, right? It keeps people from growing up, essentially. I mean, we talked at the beginning, Belinda was in her 30s. I was in my 30s when I had my first drink. Will was a sinner, but that's okay. And Kevin as well. But a lot of that was because, even if I was curious, I wouldn't do it because I was told not to. And so it makes you wonder, okay, you've got these local leaders. And I think we did a little cursory research before the show, and I think it was 9 out of every 10 legislators locally in the state government is Mormon, whereas the population is not.
No,
it's not that. In some parts of the state it is. I've lived in places where it is 90% Mormon and white, but where I live now is not. It's not like that. But my representative
overall in the state, aren't we right around 50%?
I think it's around 50. Yeah.
And in Salt Lake and Utah counties, and those not familiar with Utah, those are the high, and what's Ogden? What county is that? Davis County, right?
Ogden is Weber.
So Davis, Salt Lake, and Utah counties are a vast, vast, vast majority of the population of the state, right? Salt Lake County being kind of in the middle and the biggest county, and where the capital is, the state capital. And Salt Lake County alone, where the capital is actually very liberal, actually very LGBTQ friendly, is the highest concentration of bars, is all of these things. But yet you have I can't think of what the word is, but you have that fact, and then you also have the predominant religion headquartered there. So you have this weird dichotomy of like the institution, the group that is creating the rules, creating the norms, if you will, whether they reflect reality or not. Also in a place and in a space that is very different and very not opposed, but very I don't know, help me out here. I guess you have these two groups.
I was gonna say there's just enough Mormons to fuck shit up. That's the problem. There's like just enough voting.
Basically,
Mormons.
That clarifies it. That clarifies exactly what I was saying. I'm on my second double pour.
I think,
it's.
I think that kind of dynamic that you're describing, Kevin, it really creates like this in-out group mentality where, like, growing up in Utah, like going to Utah public schools, this dynamic, it's literally killing people. It's literally killing children, where people feel like when they're in a group, they can just criticize and ostracize people outside of the group, whether that be like the Mormon group doing it to the non-Mormon group or the non-Mormon group doing it to the Mormon group. It is toxic. It's been creating so many problems. And then you tie in stuff like the church's stance on the LGBTQ plus community. Like you tie that in, and then all of a sudden you have all these kids who are saying that being gay is a sin. And they're going to school and telling their peers that they're sinning when they're just being who they are. So like that tension of like Mormons being able to make all the rules and everybody else just having to abide by it, it really creates this tension between communities, like just not like between neighbors, when there doesn't need to be that tension.
The thing about quote neighbors, right, is if you're Mormon, you only know really the people within your ward. They call it a ward. It's what's the
congregation?
Congregation. So you only know the people in your congregation, which can be a very small area in a lot of parts of Utah, right? It could be like just 5 or 6 blocks, maybe. You only know those people. And when they change the borders of those congregations and your former friends are moved into a different one, you pretty much no longer associate with those people or had in the past.
Even if they're a block away, even if they live a block away, you don't see them.
You won't talk to them hardly ever again, especially before social media, right? Like
hell, I remember where I grew up. It was like every single house was Mormon, except for this one. So I knew all of my neighbors.
Except for
like
that one
I knew their parents. Their parents would be the ones teaching me in Sunday school, except for that one house. And then that one house kind of turned into the like, oh no, we stay away from the people that live in that house because like they're bad people. They don't go to church. But growing up, I realized no, these are just regular people, and I just didn't see them every Sunday. But growing up, like it kind of enters in your mind that like they're the others. They're not part of your group. They're not part of your tribe. So who cares about them? If they're having problems, that sucks. We're not going to send over the what do you call it? The like Boy Scout troop to go and help them rake leaves. No, we just skip right over that house. They don't get any help.
Right.
True.
Yeah, no, I had the opportunity to grow up outside of Utah. I never lived in Utah until I came to college at Brigham Young University. But and Spencer, you didn't either. You didn't grow up.
Yeah, I grew up in a different country. So,
And while I
I love church growing up.
Oh, I did
because
too.
It wasn't like it is here.
No.
Oh,
Not even.
I hated church growing up.
I was here and I still liked it pretty much growing up. So.
Because for me, it wasn't even about, measuring each other's dick length by how righteous you are or how many boxes you're checking.
How many rakes leaves you raked?
How many folding chairs you carry, right?
I had this.
Yeah.
But
That's a big one.
I'm gonna say this, and I'll probably get flack for it if friends or family hear this. But Mormons are dicks, and I'll tell you why. And I'll extend that to any high demand religion or any religion that assumes some position of superiority over other people because of what they believe. And the reason is there's a mindset that I had, at least. I'm gonna telegraph my personal experience onto everyone here and say there's a mindset that happens where if I'm checking these boxes, and in Mormonism, there's things you do. If I'm going to church every Sunday, if I'm visiting my neighbors and sharing the gospel with them, if I served a mission, which is a 2-year commitment, we should do an episode now. 2-year commitment.
Definitely. Yeah.
We'll need a strong drink for that one. If I've done that commitment, if
Several.
I'm married, whatever, you check these boxes mentally, and it creates space for you to go, yeah, but I can love the sinner and hate the sin, which really is just a cover for being an asshole. But it's okay to be an asshole because I'm doing all this other stuff. I'm paying my dues, my 10% to the Mormon church. I'm going to the temple, which it's kind of like a mega church within the Mormon church. But I feel like there's a justification mindset that comes to bear, right? When you exist in a religion that is quite directly based on your performance. If I'm doing these things, it's okay to be an asshole, a bastard, or a cunt, right?
Yeah.
So, like the DABC.
Yeah, I mean, think about how judgmental that is. Like, it's to be like, oh, Spencer, no, I don't hate you. I love you, even though you're
I
black.
just don't like what you're doing.
Or if
Even
I'm
though
talking
you're
to a person
black.
gay, or I'm
Openly
talking
black.
Even though you're wearing, oh yeah,
serious.
oh
I
my
mean,
god.
a Mormon, most Mormons wouldn't say that.
Spencer,
but
did you come out as openly black?
I did. It happened the day I was born, but yes.
Did you guys see
Yeah.
Don Lemon's thing with Chris Cuomo?
yeah.
So good. So good.
Don Lemon is openly black for those who do not know. It was revealed this week.
Yeah, for those that are
Yeah.
listening to this, decades in the future, after you're like, oh, these guys are so famous, they've been doing this for decades now. And I probably already passed away, to be honest with you. But
You lived a good
no. In the recent news publication, the news, I'm doing air quotes right now. I don't even remember who the publication was, but some
I think it was Politico.
shitty news publication
Politico. Oh my God.
was quoting a member of he's on CNN, right? The CNN media. And they referred to him as being openly black. Which, when you're on TV, that seems pretty obvious. My guess is he's also openly gay, and my guess is that's what they meant, but they screwed up. So it's been meme-worthy news recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It's happened before on the news. There was some news story back in the day. And they meant to identify like ethnicity, but they or sexuality, and they referenced it in a way that was similar to this. And I know I'm being vague and obscure, but I know this has happened before.
But wasn't it Joe Biden that said minorities and children? Was that the thing?
Yeah, it was something like, I don't know, like black kids can do just as well as white kids, or I don't know.
We'll have to find out. It was something to that effect where Joe Biden said that poor children and minority children were exactly the same, which,
he's not perfect, but
it was true. I agree.
It's better than like Donald Trump buying out a full page ad to call for the execution of innocent teenagers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
or his vice president.
We could do a whole entire episode on how Joe Biden's problematic.
There are so many. I keep thinking, like, throughout this hour or whatever we've been talking, I've thought of like 48. I think I'm up to.
I know. As
different
we've
episodes
been planning and talking behind the scenes, I'm like, man, maybe we should do like 3 episodes a day because there's so much to talk about.
I know, right?
Every week of the last 12 months feels like a year.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
And by the
my
way,
gosh.
let me point out, any of you listening right now, please comment with any suggestions you have for what you want to hear from us.
What you want us to rant about.
Yes.
Well, we don't start out ranting, and then once I'm into my second double cocktail, I start ranting a little bit. But, that's all right.
A little bit.
All right. Well, let me bring it back then. So Mormons.
Mormons.
I hate that stupid where they're like, hate the sin but love the sinner.
Right.
I hate that so much. Like, oh, you're gonna hate me, or you're gonna hate that I'm not straight, but like you'll love me. What does that even mean? Like, you hate something that is like close to my personality, but yet you can still love me? No, you don't. It's a cop out. It's a straight out. You're just trying to justify your bigotry, is how I take it, at least. I don't know about you guys, but that's how I take it. I don't
Right.
take
Well,
it.
that's what's
I
been
take it as
instructed.
offensive.
Yeah, that's what's been instructed from top leadership, right? And this is another thing we've experienced this last week, right? Because after the Capitol siege and everything, the Mormon church leadership did not say anything
For over a
And-
week.
for over a week. And so, because of that, most of their membership did not take any stances on social media. So it was all just, can't we all just get along? We all love one
Right.
another. Jesus loves you. Like, let's get back to basics. Let's unity. Come on, let's come together, right?
I was shocked. It was crickets. Like, it was like
Crickets.
from all of,
It was
because I
very
don't know.
odd.
I have a lot of Facebook friends, say, and a significant majority of them are Mormon. And Facebook's algorithm has learned I don't always like to hear what they have to say. So I was like, oh, maybe Facebook's just not telling me what they're saying about all of this.
No, they just weren't.
So I
saying
went
anything.
to specific people who shall remain nameless. Belinda in particular knows, and Nick Brown, if you're listening, you know who I'm talking about. Anyway, I went to several Facebook feeds of former friends or even current friends who are still a part of practicing Mormonism, and there was just nothing. And this is one of these moments, like so many other things, where everyone's saying something, everyone has an opinion, everyone wants to get out there, like, to put in their story, to put in their timeline, whatever. Hey, this is what happened. This is what I felt.
Axe
Body
body
spray.
spray.
Even Axe body
Put out a
spray had an
statement
opinion,
before
right?
the church did.
But Russell Nelson, nothing.
So,
I mean-
not to get off on a complete tangent here, but I mean, you look at
Go
and
ahead.
Go on a
Kevin,
tangent.
Kevin, you kind of mentioned this as well, that they're 10 years behind. And as you were talking about that, I was like, they're either weeks or years behind. I'm a Black person, obviously. And for those
You are?
those
What?
watching, anyways, I know I don't speak.
I don't see color,
I
Spencer.
don't speak
Oh
like
my
my
God,
people.
Kevin.
I don't.
To be clear, I was joking. I was joking.
Oh man, there's just so much in the Mormon church. At one point the Mormon church did not accept Black people as equals to white people. And
Yeah.
it was accepted. It was a white people club, basically. And we were all Black people were terrible. I mean, I'm using different phrasing and words here, but that's essentially, what the message was. By virtue of being born, we were sinful and not qualified to operate at the same level as white people. And this is something that, people near and dear to me accepted and lived with, and it was okay. And I grew up that way and I thought that way. And so there's an element of internal racism that comes with the Mormon church, or internalized misogyny, or internalized sexism, or homophobia, because there's a choice you have to make, right, as a human. And I made this choice many times, so I can say definitively, there's a choice you make. Hey, am I going to accept this religion as a whole in spite of how I feel? I feel that I'm equal to everyone else. I feel that I deserve to be treated the same way, to not be judged in these ways and assessed. But you know what? I'm gonna extend that to other people. I mean, I remember living in San Francisco when California had Prop 8. Okay, and it was definitely something that came from Southern California, which tends to be a bit Southern, and I guess Eastern tends to be a bit more conservative than the coastal areas. Well, the northern coastal areas, shall we say, San Francisco and the like. And I remember sitting in church and hearing over the pulpit encouragement to go out and canvass against people being able to love each other and be in partnerships, relationships, even marriage. And I felt so uncomfortable, man. Like, I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I knew people who went and did it. I didn't do it. I can say that I didn't do it because I never felt comfortable. But that's kind of the choice you have to make when you're in these high demand situations. I highly recommend, if anyone hasn't yet, watch the documentary on HBO, Going Clear.
Yes.
And you could substitute a lot of what is said about Scientology for Mormonism. You guys mentioned community earlier, and how sometimes even being across the street or moving or having those situations change can sever friendships. And that's how it is. You know, not to mention lifestyle changes. I even had a conversation with a friend this morning who I actually knew. He was in a bishopric, which is kind of like the local church leadership. Now he's got a tattoo and he's cool. He's cool as fuck. I should share this with him, but I was talking with him, and he was struggling with people judging something he said. You know, he was just expressing his belief that his prayers to this God went unanswered, and he received a barrage of, you know, what happened to you, man? I'm so disappointed. I'm sad. I'm like, yo, whoa. Can you guys just chill out? It's really interesting to see. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, ranting here, but if I were to summarize it, which you guys are going to hear a lot on this podcast, Mormonism is fucked up.
It is. And so my dad is a historian, and a lot of his early research when I was a little kid centered on the central Utah or central Salt Lake Valley, where a certain African-American, like a notable African-American Mormon lived. And so it ended up that he did a lot of work researching this particular person whose name was Green Flake. And as a little girl, we would go and we would take care of Green Flake's grave in an abandoned pioneer cemetery. We didn't know anything really about him as far as like who he was as a person, except that he was an early member of the church. He was Black and a faithful member, essentially. But very recently, like in the last few months, when I was with my parents, and I think it was kind of in the BLM, like when the height of the BLM in the summer was going on, the movement, I said something and it upset my parents a little bit. And I mentioned that Green Flake had been sold as sold as tithing to the church, or given, right?
Oh my God.
As tithing to the LDS church, and accepted and worked for the church as property, essentially. And my dad literally had to acknowledge that to my mother in the room, who had no clue that that was the case. And he was like, yeah, he was. So it runs very, very deep, right? Like
it does. And the tricky thing is, you know, I mentioned like 10 to 15 years behind. Tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, right? Like the national holiday.
The conservatives love to hate, yes.
Yeah. And in bringing that up, it made me, or in thinking about having tomorrow off work, if I'm being completely honest, it made me think about the 1965 Civil Rights Act or law, as it was that Lyndon Johnson signed, which was, you know, Dr. King obviously played a big part in driving that to happen. The Mormon Church didn't accept people of color, and it's very arbitrary, right?
They will say they've
like-
always accepted us. They will say that.
Oh God, no, God, no.
They will always say that too.
So
Always.
for
It's
so
never-
for those
yeah,
for those who aren't Mormon, in order to win the religion, in order to go to heaven, and this
way
is
of
where they
putting
get
it.
tricky. They're like, oh, everything everywhere is heaven except the very worst place, which is obviously where I'm going. But there's all these levels of heaven. But in order to make it to real heaven, where you actually get to hang out with God and be with your family all the time, and all these things that Mormons talk about being so great, you have to go to the temple. And you have to make these covenants or promises to God in the specific place. You have to learn the secret handshakes. You have to learn the passwords. You have to learn all these things. And no, I'm not making any of this up.
100% true.
Anyway, in order to do that, you have to go to the temple. And until 1978, 13 years after America, which was way behind the times too, by the way, in terms of coming to this like acknowledgement that all humans, regardless of race, are created equal and should be equal and treated equally. It took 13 years after that Civil Rights Act for the Mormon Church to acknowledge that African Americans and other people of color should be treated as equals and should be treated and allowed to return to God. Because before that, you weren't allowed, Spencer, you wouldn't have been allowed to return to God.
Nope.
Like you could do work for God.
Oh man.
You do work for God and live in a building back behind, but you
isn't
could never
there-
visit God.
We'll record
Isn't there like a quote from like Brigham Young saying that like the best that they could do is become servants in this
yeah,
life
it is.
kingdom?
Yeah,
Yes.
Oh
basically.
my god.
There's that. There's so much. There will be I promise you there will be an episode on all of this stuff. But
Yeah.
the
Yeah, I'm
idea
sorry.
that
I'm
if a
getting-
white person marries and fucks a black person and has a baby, it's death on the spot, like shit like that.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I think actually one of the most sinister things about Mormonism, from my perspective, being a single parent and I guess three of the four of us are parents, but Will, you understand this because
I have a cat.
you
It's
obviously
okay.
have.
I
you-
understand
you
completely.
He's a
have
cat
you
dad.
have parents. You know what this is like. You have Mormon parents, but Mormonism says that unless you do, and I say this intentionally, unless you do what we say, you will be separated from your family. Now, for a child, I don't know if any of you have gotten lost at a store, grocery store, separated from your parents, even for a few minutes when you were a kid. That shit stays with you, man.
Scary.
It's scary as fuck. But that is the threat, right? Unless you do what we say, that is what's going to happen to you. And I realized that I'm like, holy shit, wow, this is, it's smart as fuck. It's clever, but it's not okay. But that's what they do.
Yeah. No, another thing that like I've personally experienced is like it teaches you to hate yourself. Like so I'm not straight. I mostly date women, but I'm not straight. And I remember like in high school, like finding guys attractive. And I just remember it being like this whole in my head, I'm like, I'm sinning. How could I possibly like be attracted to this guy? How could I possibly like look at gay porn? Like I'm sinning. I'm a bad person. I am inherently a bad person. And it like became so ingrained deeply into me that like I started to hate a part of myself.
Well, it's part
And,
of the
like that's a really sinister part of the church too.
it's part of the human condition too, to want to feel like you're a part of something, like you want to be a part of a group or associated, whether it's ladies' night or guys' night or just whatever. Right. It's like, and I can't say I understand like in 100% what your experience was, Will, but I do know what it's like to want to fit in and to feel like
right.
you don't ever.
Yeah.
God, there's so many episodes we need to do. We need to
I
start
know.
doing
Yes.
like an episode. Oh, sorry.
Sure,
I've been
yes.
drinking. Now my hair shows it.
I know this is an exceptionally ranty
This is-
episode
this
because
is
we're
the-
going in all corners here.
This is the fun part
Yeah,
of the
this-
show, though.
This is
Yeah,
not
well-
a podcast about Mormonism, but Mormonism is a part of all of our experiences. So
Yeah.
This
It'll
is the fun
definitely-
part of the show
I
where I
think-
just take what's left over and I make something, and then
Good job.
it's terrible.
I'm just
but
drinking
I'm just
straight
going,
gin and chartreuse now.
Exactly. Me too.
Well, I think it's funny how like we went from just like Utah liquor laws into talking about this sort of stuff. Like that's how Mormonism has like just like injected itself into every part of our life, whether
So I
we
can't-
want it or not. It's
The
there.
good news is it's getting better. It's getting better. I used to
It
live
is, it
in
is.
what's so there's a county. Kevin kind of explained a little bit of the geography here.
Mhm.
So I used to live in Utah County. It's Utah County in Utah, right? Anyhow, and
That's where I live.
I didn't realize how fucking weird it was, but it's weird. It's really, really weird. And there's one main freeway that goes through Utah. It's called I-15, and as soon as you pass we call it Point of the Mountain, but there's a point where the freeway
It's
crests.
the county line.
It's
Yeah.
the county line. The freeway crests, and then you descend into what I can only describe as an alternate dimension filled with Stepford wives and dicks. And it's so
And
weird.
bros.
Do you guys call it Happy Valley too?
No,
is that a
not
thing?
anymore.
Yeah,
That was
that's
kind of a 90s thing,
Yeah.
calling it Happy
80s,
Valley.
90s thing. Yeah, yeah.
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 Oh, that's because
I think
everyone
of it
was on
as, like, the
antidepressants.
well, no. That's I think of it more as like
Opioids.
it's like a like you go into like a cult or something and everybody's all smiling and they're all just like all happy and you're kind of like weirded out. It's just like that.
Yes.
Just like that.
True. And one day we should talk about like the differences in Utah, like northern Utah counties, like the vibes in different places because
Yeah.
it's all different. Salt Lake County is the more liberal area because Salt Lake City itself trends more liberal, but Utah County is the extreme
Opposite.
conservative, right?
It's in
Like,
opposite. So now I live on the East Bench. I'm discovering that people don't know what bench means. So it's the foothills of the closest mountain range. That's where I live now. And it's so different. It's so different. There's maybe 2 Mormons on my street. When I moved into the neighborhood, I was greeted with a bottle of rosé. And I've been invited. The cops haven't been called on me yet for having a party.
Wow.
Whereas when I was in Utah County, cops would get called on me. And that's a terrifying experience. Just chilling in my house and the cops show up. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I didn't do anything.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely wild.
that's
So-
insane.
And coincidentally or interestingly enough, that's the only place I've been pulled over by cops, Utah County.
Utah
Really?
County.
Now that I think about it, yeah.
God damn Utah County.
I will say,
And they're the ones that are driving all the COVID cases too.
true. Anti-maskers all the way.
I guess this is going to be a 3-hour episode, so let's go.
well, I'm just going to say,
Yeah.
for those following along at
Probably
home
right.
and that need a little like inspiration, 3 parts gin, 1 part chartreuse is pretty fucking good.
But you
Oh,
need,
Jesus.
don't you need some citrus though, don't you?
I've got a lime.
That's true. That's true.
a lime.
You got a
wheel.
lime percolating.
I mean, I
All
didn't
right.
squeeze it. I didn't squeeze it.
So one of the reasons we wanted to make a last word is this is the light
I know,
at
hey.
the end of the tunnel, man. Donald Trump
Well, yeah.
is leaving office.
Into
And
another tunnel, unfortunately, though.
Yes. I've thought about this, what's his life going to be like after he got kicked off social media for the most part. Not entirely.
God.
He still has an Instagram account. He just hasn't posted.
We could do a whole episode about that. It's so insane. Like people looking back 50 years from now are going to be like, what the fuck was that?
I want to
deal?
do a whole episode on debunked Q conspiracies. Like there's been
Yeah.
like
Right.
10 already this week.
Did
where
you
it's like,
you take your adrenochrome today, by the way?
oh my God. they are so insane. Like it'll be like on January 8th, Donald Trump is going to use the emergency broadcast system.
Oh my God.
Hey,
Send
right.
everybody a tweet. And it's
I've
like,
seen
it
this.
didn't happen. It didn't
No.
happen. And they're still saying it's going to happen.
Or that I saw the craziest. We should share, at least right now, the craziest Q conspiracies we've heard. The craziest one I've heard is that Mike Pence is actually a clone, and that Mike Pence is actually in Gitmo going or in trial.
I heard he's already dead.
Military tribunal, and they're gonna execute him.
Yeah.
Oh, it already happened. Okay.
My favorite was last weekend. Supposedly, Nancy Pelosi tried to flee the country, and because her laptop was seized during the insurrection, and supposedly she was with Mike Pence awaiting a tribunal and execution. But the funny thing is, as I was like seeing these posts being made, she was on C-SPAN impeaching Trump. Like, these people are so fucking insane.
But all of this is related, Will. Belinda, we were asking what's the craziest Q conspiracy you've heard personally?
That's a good question because I don't really follow Q very well.
Good. I'm jealous. I'm so jealous.
Well, what I was saying is that all of this is related, right? And I've read some articles, and I agree with the thinking that a religious-based mindset kind of primes you to accept crazy shit.
Absolutely. From multi-level marketing schemes onward, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, Spencer. Don't forget your thought, because this is really quick. I've been having this argument with this kid I used to go to high school with.
Oh dear.
And I know it is
always a good time.
I know. But the thing is, so like I was arguing with them about the stupid, like they're saying Antifa was the one that actually stormed the Capitol. And so I'm like sending him like literally like these videos of like the Trump supporters like months ago, like declaring how much they love Trump and everything. And he's like, still like, no. That's just fake news. Well, it reminded me of this argument that I had with him back in high school. And the argument, I forgot all about this until I had like 4 people reach out to me that were mutual friends with this kid. And we're like, hey, are you concerned about this kid as much as I am? Because like, he's not in reality anymore. Like, people were asking me if I knew if this guy was okay. Anyways. And so like, I had like scrolled up on our Facebook messages, and sure enough, we were arguing about the Mormon Church. It was the same exact argument. In fact, the argument was if Joseph Smith was a polygamist. And like a couple years ago, it was more of a thought that Joseph Smith wasn't a polygamist. Like it was just like kind of rumors. But now, like, I'm pretty sure even the church acknowledges that, yes, Joseph Smith was a polygamist and he had married multiple people.
By the way, he definitely was. Yeah.
Yes, he definitely was. He married a 14-year-old. He's a fucking pedophile.
No. She was a few months shy of her 15th birthday.
Whatever. So anyways, so I'm arguing with this guy way back, like years ago, the same sort of thing, where I'm like, I'm giving him articles from the church showing that Joseph Smith was a polygamist. And he straight up would be like, no. That's just like the devil trying to trick you. So it's the same argument back and forth, except now it's with Q.
Absolutely. And my own exit from the church is more about acknowledging my own cognitive dissonance than any history of the church at all. Right. It was just the realization that I had ignored things that I knew were true in favor of my religion. And so that was essentially what caused my exit from the church.
Exactly. It's that whole weird mindset of like, okay, I've got to support this organization no matter how I feel.
Yep.
Yeah.
No matter what's right. It's really fucking weird. But yeah, religion sets people up to just believe this like crazy shit.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm trying to everything.
You're raising your hand. Yes.
No, I'm not. I'm pointing at this picture. Do you see this picture right behind me? I'll zoom in on it sometime.
Yeah, what is the picture?
It's a drawing by John Ross Boyce. So wait, John Ross?
Yeah, John Ross. Yeah.
Shout out to John Ross. Follow him on Instagram. He's wonderful. But it's a drawing of a cult leader from my youth. The Rajneeshis.
Yes. Oh my God.
Ever heard of the Rajneeshis?
If you guys have not seen that documentary,
Yeah,
Wild Country.
yeah.
You have to watch it. It's
I'm
something
watching it
country, something country. What's it
Yo,
called?
Will, you have not seen it yet?
I haven't.
Oh, you
now
have
I'm
to see-
going to.
Oh my God.
Absolutely. What's
So
it called?
first, you need to watch Wild Wild Country.
Okay.
And then the
Wild Wild
parody.
Country.
We are going to make a
The
note.
parody's even better. Yeah.
We're going to make a note because I want to talk about that whole documentary series
Awesome.
on the podcast.
But it would be interesting. Maybe this is even something we can do soon. Cult leaders, like whether we're talking about Donald Trump and the cult of Trumpism,
Yeah.
whether we're talking about fucking Joseph Smith and the cult of Mormonism, hashtag sorry, mom and dad, or we're talking about the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, who started the Rajneeshi
That guy
cult
fucks, by the
in
way.
Portland, Oregon.
They all did.
Yeah, that's fine. Like what is it that draws people in? What is it that it would be an interesting episode to do, like of what I mean, I know cult is a strong word. It's a word that people really
I personally
cringe to.
don't use it in a strong way.
Yeah, I use high
use
demand
it as-
religion. Is what
yeah,
I
like
tend to
I-
I've used it
use-
before and had people get very upset about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
use the word cult really loosely to describe like people who are
High,
steadfast in
what did you say,
belief.
Spencer? High
demand religion,
demand religion.
aka assholes, bastards, and
We should,
cunts.
yeah. Assholes, bastards, and cunts. So you're saying the DABC.
The
is a cult?
DABC. Wow,
Yeah.
I did not
Can't
see that
confirm
coming.
or deny that.
By the way, the head of the DABC, I think, am I remembering this
The
right?
new head.
He got called. I use it as a Mormon term.
Oh,
He
the old
got-
head. Okay.
Given the authority to be who he is, directly after leaving being a Mormon mission president, he
Oh
was
my
called
God.
into that.
You're
He was.
joking.
He was.
I
Yeah.
don't think
No,
that's
joking.
true currently.
No, it is. It is
It's a
true.
woman, I believe, right now.
Well, now it is with the new governor, but the previous administrator, the head.
It was very
was-
recently. Yeah.
And,
Right.
and for those who don't know, our Mormon mission president is like a bishop on steroids. So
Yeah. He's a
They're
leader.
super powerful.
He's a leader in the church.
you're
There's
like in the sauce.
250 missions in the church or something. He's like top 100 of the, how many active Mormons are there? Like 150,000. They claim like 15 million, but it's like 150,000 or something. So like it's a top like 1% of Mormons, like for sure.
Yeah.
They've checked the boxes. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll get off Mormonism. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So another topic which we won't address now, but in talking about Utah and in talking about the LGBTQ community and sexuality and all those things, sex education in Utah, that's another topic for another day. But
Oh yeah. And it's the same problem too. It's the same.
Right.
Mormons are trying to push their ideology on the rest of us, even though study after study shows that their way of sex education leads to more abortions. It leads
Yeah.
to more unplanned pregnancies.
I think I'll wrap after my thought here, but I think there's a broader theme here, which is to say, and this goes for left and right, up and down. When you establish a position of thought, it can feel threatening to accept things that on their face may seem contradictory to your core beliefs. As someone who's pretty
Yeah.
left, I don't think I'm the most left on the podcast. Probably will, but even then, maybe Kevin, maybe I'm the right voice here as far as the podcast goes. But
wow.
it can feel threatening to say, hey, maybe I don't know. I don't want to say anything specifically, but it can feel threatening sometimes when, at least if I put my Mormon hat back on and say it's okay to like a gay person, it's okay.
It's
It can feel threatening because if I like this person, what does that say about my beliefs? Am I undermining my point of view or my position by now accepting, by loving, which is kind of messed up anyways? Am I undermining my position? It's completely flawed thinking, but
it is.
I understand the feeling. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think for me to wrap up, I think I totally agree with you. And I think like having the ability to be able to like challenge your own internal beliefs and have others challenge your beliefs and be able to be in a position in like the mental headspace to just like internalize it and actually like think about it and not just be like, oh, this person just disagrees with me, so they're wrong. Like you really should try to foster this. Like for me personally, I try to challenge my beliefs all the time. Because in the past, I know I have gone down paths and I believed things that aren't true. And so now I specifically try to challenge, like I will literally find things that I believe in and I will find the opposing point and I will just try to break down my own beliefs just so that I could actually find the truth. Because what is there in this world other than the truth?
I feel like
the truth
really
is the only
good
thing that matters.
Spencer's good at this because we have a text chat that we have and we go from 5 a.m. till 1 a.m. I don't know. We just go like chatting all day.
I'll wake up some mornings and there's like 150 messages. I'm like, oh my God.
True. Yeah. Same. I'll wake up in the morning and there's 150 messages from the morning, right?
You guys wake up at like 8 a.m. What the heck?
But Spencer will post articles, just pieces of information that subtly contradict some of our beliefs, right? And then we listen to them, read them, and we have to really dig deep and think about what our real position is as a person, right? Like the most recent one, what was that article you posted the other day about
I don't know, I share a lot. I shared
do.
on the national,
There's been a
national
lot.
debt. Oh no, it was the Sam Harris podcast where he was
I struggled with that.
He tries to take an equanimous position on what's happening and say, well, it's not entirely white supremacist. Yeah. But as a Black person, I look at him like, yo, if I walked up to the Capitol and tried anything, and I said in the previous episode that they were doing things I wish I did. I don't wish I was there. I'm just saying like,
you wish you could be there.
I can't.
If you wanted to.
As a Black
wish
person,
we could have a revolution.
I don't dare resist the cops as a Black person. But go ahead, Belinda. My bad. Yeah.
No, I just liked that you posted something. We all listened to it, watched it, and then we really had to think about what our personal position was, right? Like he had one opinion. We consume a certain opinion to an extent, right? Like we're more left leaning, so we consume more left leaning information, right?
Yeah, and I read Fox News every day. I read Drudge Report.
I do look at those.
But I also look at Daily Kos. I look at Breitbart. I look at all sorts because I want to understand. Well, I want to understand how people think
their motivation, right? Like
that are on the other side.
Right.
No, that's fair. I get that. I just
Kevin's just like
these last 4 years have been rough. These last 4 years,
time for this shit.
As
these last 5 years have been rough, really.
As somebody who reads very leftist literature and very like authoritarian, fascist, libertarian, right-wing literature, I can say pretty conclusively that leftists are better writers, honestly. Like
leftists are better at everything.
Go read an average Jacobin, go read an average Jacobin article, and they're gonna be like listing like 20 studies that like back up their point. And then you go read like one Breitbart article, and it's like this dude on Twitter, he said this thing, and the politician was so mad about it. Like, I know I'm just characterizing it, but like. Try to get your news sources from different places so that you can challenge those beliefs.
Absolutely.
Like both Spencer.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, we should probably.
We should wrap this up. It's been going a minute.
This is the.
If you've made it this far, you deserve a fucking medal, or at least
you do deserve a medal.
Selection of rare alcohol from the Department of Assholes, Bastards.
We will have.
And by the way, if any of us win any of them, we will do an episode where we feature said alcohol.
Yes.
Definitely.
God, I hope I win the $300 bottle of Pappy Van Winkle. But
all right, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out with us. It's been a pleasure. Definitely leave a comment if you have any thoughts,
to follow us,
suggestions. Right? Follow us. We're trying to make it easy to find us, so we'll be, putting up a website, Instagram, Twitter, all that good shit. So hang tight. We're gonna make it awesome. The end.
We love you, even the dick Mormons.
I'm too drunk for the
People are gonna be like, "Why is his hair so fucked up?" Like, I look fucking pale as fuck. I'm gonna start tanning.